I don't know. Drugs are out, sex is out, politics are out. Everything is on hold. I mean, we definitely need something new. I just keep waiting for some new voice to come out of somewhere and just say, hey. Business. I got my wild cherry Diet Pepsi, and I got my blackjack gum here, and I got that feeling. Yeah, that familiar feeling that something rank is going down out there.
And if you can't believe it, it's a Friday once again.
Good. You're not coming home. Where can I go then? You can go to the gutter where you belong, you filthy pig!
The stuff that dreams are made of. Huh?
Huh? Greetings. I still believe. Not in fairy tales, mind you, the soft wrapped lies whispered to children to lull them into sleep. Those hushed tones of parental propaganda gilded upon the edges with good intention, but at their heart, the goal of submission to authority. I believe in something harsher, something chiseled out of a broken and jagged stone that built the foundations of ancient monuments from empires that have long since fallen. I believe in the unyielding hands of men who carve their own history with blood and sweat. Individuals who understand that while survival is not a given, success is only taken by those who act. Tonight, we will be talking about a story of inheritance, although not the kind that is granted from a last will and testament. This is a birthright, written in blood, in fire, and mutilation, an heirloom that's passed from father to son at the edge of a blade. There is no comfort in this lineage, only relentless, grinding obligation to be stronger, more ruthless, to always strive to be better, no matter the cost. In a universe both separate and relatable to our own, where normal men are measured by the steel of their will and the scars on their flesh. A universe where past refuses to be forgotten or die, as the ghosts of duty and expectation whisper to each successive generation, constantly urging the next in line to step forward, to suffer, to prove that they are worthy of a name that will outlive their bones. And yet, despite this mantle of responsibility, this yoke of definition hoisted upon each man who was born into the obligation to do so, fate, the iron chain, tradition, the warden of the born-again prison, the most dangerous weapon in this universe is belief. Belief that perhaps the cycle can be broken, that the sins of the father do not have to be inheritance of the son, that power need not be built on the ashes of those who came before. But belief alone is not enough, because in this world, the only thing sharper and more deadly than hope is the pirate that looks to cut it down. Step with us tonight into a realm where legend and nightmare are the same, where the future is written in the blood of the past, and where only a single question lingers in the cold, empty space of the known universe between generations. Who survives when belief meets the blade? Welcome to the gutter. Everyone ends up here eventually. It is only a matter of time. And joining me tonight, we have a few special guests. But before I introduce them, JP, how are we doing tonight, man?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Spring break is this week, so I'm going to be doing some pretty deep spring cleaning. So I made sure to get my bleach and ammonia, really dump, you want to combine them for that good spring cleaning, that deep clean,
For those of you at home, do not combine bleach and ammonia.
No, it's fine.
Do not do that. The gutter will not be held responsible for any losses or damages of life. But it's good to have you here, man. And also joining us for the first time live, our executive producer, Eric and Abe. Good to have you here, man.
It's almost good to be here. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I just like to point out to everybody in the chat, behave, especially you, Snuggie Jr. You're on thin ice, thinner than newsprint. Watch yourself. But thank you for having me on.
So absolutely. And then we also have Kayla. Kayla, thank you for joining us yet again. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I can't, don't make me laugh right now.
Kayla's suffering from a rather nasty cold.
Well,
and sounds like a 57-year-old man.
Make sure you eat your creamed corn.
It's not the good creamed corn, though. I like it when it's more runny.
Sadly, I sound like the impression that Sean does of me on
Oh my God, that's what it is. That's perfect.
I literally sound like Sean likes to do my accent and do the Catwoman voice, and that is literally exactly how I sound right now. So,
well, Kayla,
all that
we
yelling in the
appreciate you for
background.
being. We appreciate you for being a trooper and joining with us tonight. We know you got to go early, so we're going to get to your takes very early here. But first, I do have a question. Now, Arrogant Ape, I appreciate you coming on. It's fantastic. Our executive producer on the air. And I thought this would be an excellent time to ask you about your career prior to becoming a producer. I understand you did a little bit of acting in the past. And I just thought, did you have any commentary on that, or would you just like to go to the footage?
Look, man, growing up in the streets of LA is tough. I look, I'll let the footage speak for itself before
All
I
right.
comment.
Here we go. I'm moved.
I mean, that's definitely LA, but I think that was a Chicago typewriter he was using.
It was. I was surprised. And the emoting is fantastic. I mean, if you look at this again, just look at that expression. Look at that grin. And he just holds it. It doesn't. They get a little bit of a lip drag, but it's impressive. It's impressive.
Which episode of Racist Batman is that from?
The next one. It's from the next one.
I can't even tell you.
Dr. Taka, the treacherous Jap.
Oh man. So did you have any commentary on that, Arrogant Ape?
I wasn't trained to handle the Chicago typewriter, as I said. The director told me, like, just kind of give it a bit of a good grip, twist it a little bit. I don't know why he wanted me to do that, but you got to learn on the fly. It's
We're gonna capture this arrogant ape.
That's for Wednesday. Anything's turning to the chat real quick. We've got Assimilating Knowledge has joined us. Where is everyone at? Well, when you drop in your comment at 4:30 for a show that starts at 11:30, you're just a wee bit early, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. I feel like a night shift mall cop. There you go. Citizen Ronan has joined us. The embarrassment is palatable. Exactly, my friend. Exactly. Arrogant Ape's also in the chat. He's saying the gutter chat is the best. And then, of course, he also said the Lord Crackhead comics chat is the best chat. So I like that. That's your typical politician producer guy running the show right there. Thank you, sir. Scrolling down, we've got Snuggy Jr. has joined us. What's up, chat? Always a pleasure to see Snugs. Scrolling down, we've got Peter Orchard Studios in the chat. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you for stopping by. Looking forward to talking about the book tonight, Metabarons. Just volume 1, though, and we'll get into that, why we're only going to cover volume 1. And how about hitting that like button? Well, that'd be nice. I don't ever ask anybody to subscribe or hit the like button, but it's always appreciated when you do both. Hostman's Lounge celebration. Indeed, our 100th episode is tonight. Who would have dreamed that actually not quite 2 years yet. I think we're 3 weeks away from the official 2-year anniversary, but the gutter has been going on for 2 years now. And we're going to continue as long as JP keeps on showing up when I send him the link. So Zaid Comics is here. He says it's gutter time. Exactly. It's a good time for all. Ken B has joined us. Great to see Ken B. Scrolling down, who else do we have in the chat? Mustard gas is the best cleaner. Fact. Thank you, Henry Bemis. I actually had years ago, 20 plus years ago, I actually had a coworker whose wife died just from bleach, though. She chlorined herself to death. She was cleaning the bathroom with all the doors and the windows closed and suffocated.
Okay. Let's keep it light.
It was tragic. And Maromi's here. Great to see Maromi. Kayla is still alive. Yes, so far. We'll see if she makes it through the episode or not. That was way more wholesome than I was expecting. Indeed. That's what happened when he didn't get his bananas. Oh, there you go. It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times. Indeed. Bring back Tommy guns. Indeed. Nothing like throwing some 45 ACP at a high cyclic rate of fire. Who can't agree with that? John's Longbox is here. Great to see John's Longbox. Thank you for joining us. H is for Heretic Throat Goat. Well, thank you. And I think that's going to be it. Other than Ken B saying, easy, chum. I'll use the bat N-word to get us out of this jam. Racist Batman and Robin try Basco. Well, Robin's forehead would probably fall out in ease before the first half. That thing is just massive, man. It's like a Orange on a toothpick. It's impressive. Makes Bancroft's forehead look small. Kayla is still alive, but not if JP and Aldous have anything to say about it. Exactly. Well, with that being said, as I mentioned, tonight's book that we will be talking about is indeed Metabarons. But we're only covering Volume 1, specifically Volume 1, Othan. Now, this was the first 4 issues, and Metabarons has an extremely convoluted publishing history. This started out as a backup in the Incal series in Europe. It then moved over to Metal Hurlant, which is our version of heavy metal is the English version of Metal Hurlant, essentially. And Metal Hurlant started before heavy metal, as in a response to the growing number of just graphic novel comic magazines that were going on in Europe at the time. And Metal Hurlant's the one that everybody remembers, but we've talked about numerous of the other ones in passing here, specifically Langio Story, which is the Italian version that predated Metal Hurlant. You can get, while you can't, this particular volume that I'm showing here from Humanoids is pretty uncommon. Because, and again, the publishing history for the English translations is really convoluted and they're all over the place. But more than likely, if you're going to grab this, you're going to grab this particular collection, which is available for Amazon right now. $30 for the paperback, $50 essentially for the hardcover. It's 540 pages, covers most everything. And we'll get into why it doesn't cover everything a little later, hopefully. But specifically, tonight we'll be going over the first 4 floppies. The floppies there were 17 floppies that were released by Humanoids from January of 2000 to May of 2002. They spanned 17 issues. Issues are not easily found in the wild. I've seen them everywhere from dollar bins to up to $10 an issue. It really depends on just where you're at and how many they have and how well they've been selling. In general, each individual floppy issue is valued anywhere, most of the time, from like $2 to $5 in that range. However, collections, like full 17-issue collections, are in fairly high demand and are kind of hard to come by. So I've seen the full run in good condition, all 17 issues in good, above reader grade condition, go for over $200 on auction. I've also seen them go for $50. So it's one of those books where you're really rolling the dice. You can hold them, and if you can get a full 17-issue run, it's kind of cyclic. When Giménez died, actually, yes, I should do this real quick. The creators of Metabarons are Alejandro Jodorowsky, who was born in February of 29. He's still alive. He's 96 years old. He's a filmmaker. He's a writer and general cult legend. Primarily for his film El Topo, but also for his version of Dune, which we will get into. The artist, but he's primarily the writer. The artist on this was Juan Giménez, Argentina via Spain, or Spain via Argentina, I guess would be the way to put it. And sadly, he passed away in April of 2020 at the age of 76. Now, when Giménez passed away in 2020, there was a huge spike in sales because every obituary of this guy mentioned Metabarons. And he did a ton of other stuff, but Metabarons is his most well-known work, so that's what he's associated with. So if you were looking for an investment opportunity, given that Jodorowsky is 96, if you want to put together a full 17-issue run and just sit on it until he passes, the week that he passes would be the moment to drop that on eBay and see if you can score, excuse me, a good price for it. I don't usually encourage that, but I am telling you right now, because Jodorowsky is still alive, the prices will be lower than they will be the minute he dies. All the prices will spike because that's just the fucking way the market works. For an example, prior to July 5th of 2018, there were issues of Mr. A, number 1 and number 2, going for like $5 to $10 on eBay. And the minute Ditko's death was announced, to the tragic reality of all comic fans, because you should worship at the altar of Wally Wood and Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby. But as soon as his death was announced, those will never see that price point again. Everything jumped. And now you're lucky if you can find a Mr. A number 1 or number 2 in even reader grade for anything less than 20. So there's that. But I know Kayla, sorry for the long-winded form there. I'll get into a little bit of the history of Metabarons. I know you're not feeling well and you want to get out of here so you can go get some rest. So we're going to jump right into your take. And you had 2 pages specifically you wanted to talk about. But before we talk about those pages, give me your impressions of what Metabarons is, at least this introductory entry point.
Well, just in general, I just think Metabarons is pretty much like it's a combination of your traditional space opera mixed with a lot of influence from Dune, um, a lot of influence from Japanese samurai culture, and there are shades of Michael Moorcock's Elric in it. So that's pretty much what sums up Metabarons in general to me. So I think that's what you were asking.
Yes, and then there were 2 pages specifically that you wanted to highlight. And really it gets the pages get to the crux of what the Metabaron is, the title it is. So speak a little bit about why you specifically wanted to talk about these pages and what they mean in the context of the story, if you don't mind.
So pretty much this is, to me, why I wanted to talk about these pages is because this is kind of representing some of the Bushitaka that they have in there, which is the code of honor that the Metabarons follow. And it kind of just talks about how you must dedicate yourself to victory at all cost. Otherwise, like, the only other option is death. And pretty much in order to obtain any kind of victory, you are going to have to take out anyone, even your own blood. And just like the links to Bushido, which is the Japanese samurai code. So it's just like the moral code that talks about the samurai's practices, behavior, lifestyle, and philosophy. But you can see that within the context of this situation that goes down here. Yes.
All right, and then now the second page that you highlighted brings up another interesting point, and this gets into the convoluted publishing history of this book.
Here we go.
This page is not actually in every collected edition of Metabarons.
Nope.
It's in some of the floppies, not all, and it's in some of the collections, not all. It all depends. Humanoids did some really strange stuff. They fixed it since then. If you pick up the collected work that I highlighted on Amazon, it is in that collection, and that is actually complete. That's this version right here that you can find on Amazon. But this particular page, amongst several other pages, were cut out due to the brevity that they were looking to do with the floppies. In some of the floppies, not all the floppies. That's why I say this thing's very convoluted. But this page really hits on that point that you were talking about the Bushido code and how it's passed from generation to generation, and it's a mantle. It's not just a title, but when you accept that, you accept a certain level of accountability, responsibility, and honor.
Yeah.
And then you're supposed to maintain that. And this is the great grandfather giving his soul and his essence and that meaning to the great grandfather of the primary character who hasn't been born yet in the context of the series, nor will they be born in the first 4 issues. He's mentioned in later issues of these first 4. But what you essentially have to start off the narrative technique here is we're using 2 robots, and one robot is going to narrate to the other one the story of the Metabarons. And this is the start of that. And then that arc is carried throughout the entire series up to meeting the timeline where the storytelling is taking place, which is a nice narrative framework for how they handle it. And it's interrupted at times. But Kayla, thank you so much for joining us. Go get some rest. And thank you again for being a trooper and making it here.
Thank you for letting me come in while I was sick. And yes, I mean, pretty much this whole series is interesting and how it just follows the 5 Metabarons, pretty much, because there's 5 major ones it's going to follow. But I got to get some rest. I will probably stay in the chat until I pass out because I just drugged myself with some NyQuil. But I got to save my voice for tomorrow. So.
Oh, for sure, Kayla. Get some rest. And remember, I mean, the 3 secrets to getting healthy are vitamin C, rest, and copious amounts of whiskey.
Oh, okay. I'll try to remember that.
Live
Okay.
Serrano.
Or
All right.
Serrano.
All right, DeSerrano. All right. Good night, guys.
Have a
Hey,
good one. And
Caleb.
with that, we are going to take a brief
night.
intermission. We'll be back on the other side.
Yeah.
Try some new Minute Maid orange tangerine. It's got calcium.
Then I'm not drinking it.
Oh, no, it's sweet. You'll like it.
I don't believe you.
Well, then who would you believe?
I don't know, Robert Loggia. Whoa, Robert Loggia.
Billy, your mother's right. New Minute Maid orange tangerine tastes great. It's got as much calcium as milk.
If you say so, Mr. Loggia.
Yeah.
This is great.
Enjoy your breakfast.
New Minute Maid orange tangerine with calcium.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we're back. And so I apologize to the chat. I had to rush through some stuff so we could get to Kayla's takes so that she could take off. We're back now. We've got a little bit of the chat I've got to catch up on. Mo Biggs has joined us. He's saying, hate everybody, but he says, congratulations on 100 shows, guys. Well, thank you, Mo. It's always great to see you, and thank you for stopping by and saying thanks. Peter Orchard says, it's on a Russian pirate site if you can't find it for a reasonable price. I always encourage you to purchase it. But yes, like a lot of things that we cover here, there are many things that are on Russian pirate sites. Scrolling down, we've also got the book is on the Internet Archive. Yes, parts of it are on the Internet Archive, which I strongly encourage you all to go and join and support the Internet Archive. They do an absolute fantastic job of archiving pulp magazines. Some of my own scans are on the Internet Archive for some issues that were not up there. Anything that's in the public domain, I do try to toss over and get on there when I can. Mobig says, don't be a vulture. Let's hope he's collecting Social Security well into his 300s. Well, I think with Doge, that's going to end, but here's the hope, right? John's Longbox says, I got Mr. A and Metabarons. And that's why we jive, man, because you buy the good shit. Laugh Aloud, you'll be collecting a check longer after we were all dead. Probably. I think they're talking about Jodorowsky there. Assimilating Knowledge says, I'm sitting on a box set of Disney Star Wars just waiting for everyone to die. No, and like the VHS version of Star Wars prior that came out, the collected edition with like the silver and the gold box that doesn't have the changes that Lucas made in the late 90s is, God, I've seen that going on eBay for hundreds of dollars. It's insane. Yeah, Kayla said Moorcock. She said Moorcock, not Moorcocks. It was not plural. But yeah, that's in relationship to the author of Michael Moorcock of Elric, which does have some influence here. And we'll get into the influences here briefly as soon as I catch up on the chat. Make yourself a bourbon and honey, Kayla. That's what I've been telling her all week, is she needs to drink more whiskey. Scrolling down, we've got the Code of Bushido. Hot toddy sounds good, and I'm not even sick. It's been in the 30s today. Oh, we started to have some nice weather here, Bemis. So I'm sorry to hear that you are not experiencing that wonderful joy that we've got going on. Scrolling down, vitamin C means crack. Yes, Mo Biggs picked up on the C for sure. I'm in the chat for a minute. It's hard to talk. But thank you again, Kayla, for joining us. We appreciate it. I just realized that Arrogant Ape, the producer, doesn't have a wrench, but I have a wrench, and I'm an idiot. Well, that should tell you something about the show. I think that sums it up really well right there. Internet Archive is pretty good, but it's not illegal, so it's not as cool. No, the only thing that makes you cool is if you smoke. We've all agreed on that. Watch the Wednesday show. We go over it weekly. I think that's going to do it. Jason Sandberg says, happy 100. Jason Sandberg, one of my favorite guests, man. I can't wait to have him back, hopefully later this year when he launches the second installment of Jupiter, man. Absolutely love that guy. Comic fan just like myself, right down to his bones. And we're going off the rails on a crazy train. Always, man. Week in and week out, the chat makes this show just as much fun as JP does behind the scenes. So, gentlemen, to get back kind of on more of a linear track to talk about this, let's go into a little bit of the history. When you guys were reading this, and I understand we each read, we had a little bit of confusion in show prep. And some people read the first 4 issues. Some people just read the first issue. We're going to talk about all 4, but what was your general impressions of what you read. Well, I guess even before that, had you read this before? Was this something you'd been exposed to? We're going to go with Aragonate first.
First off, I'd like to say it's a shame that Kayla had to drop off before she could try her Robert Loggia impression. We're going to miss Kayla. That would be cool. But yeah, I'd never read the Metabarons. I'd heard about it in passing. And then I'd heard it recommended on this channel enough that when I finally saw this hardcover collected 5th edition, I was like, well, I kind of have to buy it. I'd had no idea when I bought it that it was involved in any way in the in-call universe, which is crazy. My experience with it so far, I mean, I only read as far as we're going to go tonight, but it's pretty damn brilliant. Like it's a classic Greek tragedy in space. Like it has all the makings of a like very fine Greek tragedy. And it looks like how I would almost kind of want Dune to look too. So I mean, I had a blast reading it. JP, not so much, I don't think.
Well, you touched on something there that I will talk about as soon as we get JP's take. So JP, I know you only read the first issue, you didn't make it through all 4. So what was your just impressions of that?
Yeah, I mean, you can say that I'm the problem. That's fine. The problem is me. I didn't read enough of it. But I mean, okay, I didn't not like it, but I'm also very much a story first guy. So it would kind of be like reviewing, imagine watching the first, like 25 minutes of Godfather. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I mean, I really liked it. It definitely read to me as an art first book, but that might change the more I read it. I was drawn to the art more than anything. But it did give, like Aldous, like you said earlier, the robots telling each other a story is a great frame narrative. It's like a hyper futuristic Canterbury Tales.
Yes.
And which, I mean, anytime you can refer to Canterbury Tales, you should. But yeah, I think my favorite part of the first issue was when you already showed the page, but when they exchanged their tramp stamps.
Oh, that is right here. Yes, and the tattoo of the hawk, of the falcon, however you want to, it's a bird of prey that's on the chest of the existing Metabaron. It is a generational handoff, as the essence, as the spirit, the title of Metabaron is transferred, and it's usually transferred after a defeat in combat. So the father has to sacrifice himself so that the son can inherit the mantle. And that transfer is very akin to a tramp stamp. Yes.
I was trying to compare the two tattoos. Do they look like distinctly different to you? Because it looks like it's a whole new creature on our Metabaron's chest.
You know, I never thought about that. I never even caught that or paid attention to it. I just assumed it was the transfer. I'd have to go back and take a look at it. There's so much in this, and you bring up a good point. Is that there's a lot of minutia that's handled in the art that's not in the context of the story. And really, I mean, to take a giant step back, also, why is it a hawk? One of the reasons it's a hawk is because that's the signet of House Atreides. They have a hawk. And everything that Metabarons is rooted deeply in Dune. And the reason for that, as I said earlier, Jodorowsky is absolutely infamous for being the guy that was handed the mantle in 1974 of making Frank Herbert's Dune into a movie. So in 1974, Jean-Paul Gibbon, who was a French film producer, purchased the film rights for Frank Herbert's 65 magnum opus of Dune. And Dune itself, man, I mean, that was a book that was it was turned down by every major publisher. It was a car manual manufacturer that ended up publishing that. So it's wild that it even got published. The film rights get sold to a French producer, again, Jean-Paul Gibbon. Jean-Paul Gibbon then taps Jodorowsky, who's a Chilean filmmaker, to direct it. And what followed is like a legendary acid trip of a nightmare film production. So again, that's 74 that happens. In 76, 2 years later, Frank Herbert travels to France to find a convoluted concept that differed greatly from the novel. Salvador Dali's involved. The guy that created the Alien, Geiger, H.R. Geiger's involved. Dan O'Bannon is involved. And like everything from the late 70s to like the mid 80s, like Alien comes out of this because Dan O'Bannon was talking to Mobius because Mobius was involved. And Mobius is like, oh, you got to meet my buddy H.R. Geiger. And they start talking. And Geiger does some designs. And O'Bannon remembers this great story that he read in Death Rattle, and he writes the initial script of Alien while he's working on this movie. But for 2 years, they're working on it. They're doing all this pre-production. The script is larger than a phone book. If you go online on the Internet Archive, they've got a 600-page like Bible, and it's not even the full version. It's just part of it, and it's got like Chris Foss's concept sketches and some script pages and some of the ideas and outlines. It's insane. But by 76, when Frank Herbert goes and visits Jodorowsky, he's already burned through $2 million in 1970s money of the $9.6 million film budget. And it just kept on bleeding to the point that and I should say this, the proposed film that Jodorowsky had was 14 hours.
Oh.
And so eventually it gets shelved because no production company is going to touch this. It's just way too overblown. They're burning through money. Gibbon ends up selling the film rights to Dino De Laurentiis' production company in the late 70s, which led into the pre-production and the eventual filming of David Lynch's 1984 Dune, which uses a lot of the imagery, especially for the Harkonnens, that were born out of that pre-production. And now, why did I just spend all that time talking about it? Because that 3, 4, 5 year period that Jodorowsky worked on this intensely is poured into Metabarons. And so as he walks away from that, he does a couple other projects, but he's always got this idea in his head that everything that came from that needs to be told. But he can't tell Dune because he doesn't have the rights to it. So he ends up telling the Metabarons. And so what you get is this story. And so there's a lot of references to Dune-esque things throughout this series. And you can't talk about Metabarons and not talk about Dune. They're linked hand in hand because of Jodorowsky's connection. So with all of that being said, with the groundwork being set, we're going to go into a little bit of the first few issues. So the first issue of the floppy, the StoneCutters, and Arrogant Ape, you had an excellent point earlier this week. You're like, oh, the StoneCutters. I didn't even think about that. Elaborate a little bit why that's the title, if you would.
Why that's the title?
Yes, from the context of the story.
Oh, because I mean the sort of foundation of this family on this planet, what was it called? That would birth the lineage of Metabarons. They have their own little planet. They're sequestered in this little space, in the universe, and they're just allowed to be there because they're very good at cutting stone and then moving it very quickly. They are the StoneCutters. They make this marvel that all these other richer planets, entities like the Technopope come in to use for their own like cathedrals and such.
I will never not laugh at the Technopope.
No, and and that's a good point to pause and just talk about that. There are a lot of terms that are used throughout this that I don't know if it's just the English translation or if it's the actual context of what they were trying to get across. But a lot of the words that they use are lame as hell. It's the only knock that I have on this is you get into like Technopope or like Mecha, or there's just some that it's just a little, to quote Mike, because we always go back to Mike, it's just a little heavy-handed.
See, I read those as camp. Is that the wrong reading?
I don't think it's ever intended that way. This is meant to be very serious. And
wait, hang on a second. Are you telling me that, because I laughed a lot reading this book. Dude, when the one robot says that he blew his emotion circuits,
Yeah, and I think that context is to add a little bit of levity
Okay.
in the
Yeah.
narrative format, in the same fashion that, because you mentioned Canterbury Tales, and I always think of, if you say Canterbury Tales, and ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be longer than an hour of an episode. I apologize. We haven't even gotten into context yet, and we're already 45 minutes in. But when you talk about Canterbury Tales, and Abe knows this well, you can't mention that, and I don't bring up Hyperion, because Hyperion to me is Dan Simmons did a great job of modernizing Canterbury Tales into a sci-fi epic, and he
Yep.
does the same thing. He uses levity within the format of the narrator to offset the deep seriousness of the story of the characters. So you're giving these characters this great depth and this emotional baggage and this weight of morality of the choices that they have to make and why they're on this journey. And I think that's being done in the same way here by Jodorowsky. Is he's as soon as you finish a really heavy, like the father-in-law dies, to give his son-in-law the mantle of the Metabaron. In light of the family's about ready to be crushed, because in order to save the son-in-law, they had to reveal their secret of how they move these massive blocks.
Mhm.
And by doing that, they've
And
doomed
the Technopope.
themselves. And the Technopope.
Yes.
But they've doomed themselves. So how do you you've just done that, you've dropped this huge weight. How do you make it a little lighter? Well, you cut back to the narrative and you have a robot say that its emotion chips are burning out and I need a minute. And it's not I need a minute, it's I need 14 nanoseconds to, catch up because I'm so excited to hear the next part. It's just that levity that you see in Canterbury Tales, that you see Dan Simmons exploit so well in Hyperion. I think it's the same technique because you don't see that in the context of the actual story. It's just in the narrative side of it. Now, each issue, starting off with issue 1, obviously there's no preamble because nothing's happened yet. So you do get this absolutely beautiful front matter in the book. And then as you go into issue 2, you get each issue then has our story so far, and it catches you up with where it is, because this was on a bi-monthly release schedule. Now, these little blurbs have almost become famous in and of themselves for how they recap the story, because they're not exactly consistent at all times with what happened exactly in the previous issue. They were written well after the fact for the US release, so some of them hint at things. It's not so apparent in the first 4. It doesn't get apparent until I think you get beyond issue 10. But if you actually read these and you pay attention, they will hint and even suggest things that haven't happened yet, because whoever wrote these read the whole series before they wrote the preambles. So they're absolutely fantastic to catch you up. But there are a couple of missteps throughout them where they spoil some of the story as you go deeper into it. They are only available in the individual issues, which is why people still collect the issues. These are not included in any of the collected stuff. So you've got that on issue 3. Nice cover, and then again that same preamble, and then issue 4, and then the same preamble. And again, these issues are fairly easily accessible, but I do want to jump over to the chat real quick. The spirit transfers, and yes, they do look different. I feel the symbol evolves. So there's your answer, Abe, on that. The tramp stamp joke makes me wish people watched Jake and Peter Orchard's studio show so they wouldn't get me called back to Peter wanting to grow up to be a Care Bear and shoot beams out of his belly. Well, there you go. I do try to catch Peter Orchard Studios and Jake's show as much as I can. What Jodorowsky's doing is what you get when you mix cocaine and acid. Yes, indeed. That is the case. Awesome One's joined us. I enjoy Care Bears. Awesome One was singing Bon Jovi lyrics in the chat earlier. So there's that. Paul Atreides, I hate sand. It's coarse, rough, and irritating, and it gets everywhere. That was never stated, and do not disparage Dune. I'm going to catch up a little bit, just kind of jumping down, guys. It was dry humor at the time in comics when meta commentary was new, sort of like Futurama 20 years ahead of its time. There is a little bit of that, and it's one of those things where when somebody drops something new, it resonates, and then everybody copies it. It's no different than Watchmen. Watchmen gets degraded because of all of the pathetic imitators that are trying to be Watchmen. And so people look back at Watchmen and go, oh, it's its fault. No, it's all the pathetic people that are trying to be Watchmen. Metabarons has the same thing going for it to a large degree. There's a lot of people that try to emulate what's going on here. And it's never really been done even remotely well. But with all that being said, to jump into some of the pages here, I do want to talk a little bit, Ape, before we get into some of the pages that you referenced. The construction of the panels. Now, we looked at this page earlier when Kayla was still here and she wanted to mention it. Essentially, what this book does, it doesn't do anything dramatic art-wise. There are some really nice splashes. There are some really nice moments. But for essentially what it comes down to is it's using a 9x9 grid. Now, you're going to look at this page and go, but all this, that's not a 9x9 grid. No, it's not. This gets into how you can take a standard 9x9 grid, 3x3, or a 3x3 grid, 9 panels, and manipulate it to what we've talked about repeatedly on this show, which is measures, tones, and it's a musical number. It's a song that you're singing as you're graphically displaying this and marrying it with the text.
Yep.
And so as you look at these pages, I want you to keep that in mind, because this is something that's repeated throughout this entire book. It doesn't do anything stark. It's not a 90s book in the sense of Western 90s comics. Yes, it's a Western book because it's a European book, but it doesn't have that American 90s edge to it. It's very structured and formatted in a way that it should be for sequential art to work with the way that it's constructed. And I think that that's really important as we go through some of these pages to keep that in mind. But Ape, you were going to say something. I apologize for walking over you.
No, not at all. This page, I think the point that you're making, it kind of illustrates like how to work within those frameworks, the 3x3, 9 panels, because you have this one at the top, which is just a setting. Here are some people sitting in a circle. It's small, it's up in the corner. You're going to look up there anyway, because that's where the top of the page is. Then you have these 2 bordering panels in the middle, where you have this confrontation of word, this fight between father and the daughter, right? They're on either side of this center panel, which shows the circle. And then all of a sudden, down here to the bottom left, we have action that breaks us out of the confrontation that was just words into physical violence. And so the background is lost, because all of a sudden we've moved into this like sort of a physical fight. Right. And then just to say that this page kind of outlines exactly what you're saying. I'm going to stop before I sound really retarded.
No, man, you're hitting on all the points of what a 3x3 panel grid and how you construct it is. It's just measures and tones. It's how long does that, we're extending out that upper scene, but we're going to shrink it down. So it's there and we're holding on it, but we're holding on it to a lesser degree. And then we expand out and we get moments. And so we see each side of that circle framed out, like you said, and then we get the action, and the action is instantaneous. And as it should be done, the action occurs between the gutters. You see the resultant of the action, but never the action occurring. And that's the way sequential art should be done. Now, Citizen Ronan asks, is there dong in this? I ask because it's French, and I won't read anything with dong in it. And Henry Bemis answers for me and says, there are no dongs in this comic, except for the 93 times there are dongs in this comic.
I mean, if you consider spaceships to essentially be dongs, space dongs.
There are a lot of phallic shaped things in this, but I do not believe there is any actual dong. At least in these 4 issues. I don't recall any dong.
Just by the by, I also appreciated, I think I'm in the right scene, but I enjoyed because you talk a lot about the construction of a page, and I'm always interested in the construction of a story. And I liked how they set up the theme of losing in order to win. Similar to, in chess, when you have to sacrifice your queen strategically, or in football, when you need to tank to get a better draft pick.
Exactly. And here this is a really nice illustration of, and this is where, we talk about this a lot too, in that there is Bendis level dialogue spamming that doesn't add to the context of the story. And then there is something like this, where you're summing up. A lot of people are going to look at that, especially in modern comics where they're not used to actually reading things. And they're going to go, well, that's really verbose. We can cut that down. No, not in this case. This is the essence of everything that comes after. Issue 1 is establishing this. And it's that mantle, it's the responsibility, it's the accountability. And that's what we're establishing here. And it's vital to that. And then you see that structure again to that 9-panel grid as we go through this. Only here we have the narrative again up on top. And then as we're talking the narrative, we get these absolutely fantastic panels. And before we move into some of the stuff that you wanted to talk about, Abe, I want to talk about some of this, because this is just, if you're going to do sci-fi and you're going to do it well, you have to blow your reader away with what they're seeing. And you can't just put a single ship in an image. You've got to be epic at all levels. And this is a home run. You're showing that epic layer. You've got these ships that are borderline cathedrals of technology blasting away. There's energy and explosions going everywhere. It's chaotic. It's chaos in the void. That's what I want to see in a sci-fi book. Like this, you can mesmerize yourself by staring at this panel. And then again, as we delve into the world to find the secret essence that allows them to levitate these blocks, we get these just absolutely Chris Fossian inspired panels that are beautiful. I don't know if you can get color like this and make it work this way. It's just absolutely stunning what they're doing. It's an alien world, but you understand the geology immediately. It's one of those that just works instantaneously with the mind's eye. And then
it reminds me of Antelope Valley in Arizona. You ever been? Or Antelope Canyon?
No, I have not.
Yeah, they've got canyons and caverns with this sort of striation. It's not in this color. So this is Antelope Canyon on crack. But I mean, it is a beautiful, otherworldly, yet familiar design. And that's the balance to be struck. Like with stories like Dune, there's familiar things like, oh, Catholic Bible. I know what that is. Orange Catholic Bible. What is that? And bullfights. Okay, why are we talking about bullfights with all this? It's something familiar, but strange and alien. Yeah.
Or when you put a camera for your colonoscopy.
Yes. Thank you, JP. And the last page I want to talk about comes a little bit later in issue 3, and again, it's that epic aspect of the sci-fi atmosphere that they're establishing. They're establishing their genre, and they hit it again. It's a home run every time we see it. One of the things I like the most about this that lower 2-page spread is it extends across, but we've got like some association with humanity in it, because we're showing the gunner. We've got a pilot or a gunner or something, and then we're showing what's going on back beyond it. It's really well understanding and framing out. And that's one of the things that I think Metabarons does really, really well, is they put it on a level of an individual, and they focus on individual for a short period of time, but you get the sense of the epic nature of where the individual is. And Abe, one of your discussion points really hit home on that. But first, I do want to talk about one of JP's. It was the only thing that JP really wanted to talk about. Which is when his heart stops beating. He wants to toss his body into the dumpster behind the Cheesecake Factory. So I have to ask, man, like, when you relettered this, what was, why?
Oh, I think of all the horrible restaurants. The Cheesecake Factory just makes the funniest random restaurant reference.
This spurn, I created a whole separate DM group just for this one, just so we could kind of talk throughout the week on what our thoughts were on what we were reading and stuff. And this was JP's only addition to that entire discussion. So
yeah, I mean, it seems like the kind of place that you would run into. Like, you could run into, a girlfriend from high school or Baker Mayfield.
Yes, I would completely buy that. But yeah, thank you for that beautiful reletter. Now, to go back, Ape, because you're a special guest tonight. It's great to have our executive producer on with us, and we've already asked a couple of questions for you. But this is really where the stories takes off, and we're talking about the Metabarons themselves and who they are, and we're talking about how the father passes on to the son. The father has to take something of the humanity of their son and replace it with something. And so in this case, this is the first example we see of that. The father takes the ear and part of the brain of his son and replaces it with this enhanced technology. So what was it about this that really resonated with you?
Well, first off, it's a huge dick move. If your dad before you just took your left hand, you're like, I'll take half of my kid's head. But beyond that, you know, like, I mean, this is such a very human thing. And I know that's silly in a book about humans, but I mean, you think about like all sorts of different cultures in humanity. Isaac? What? Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, but you think about like groups like the Chambri tribe in Papua New Guinea. They scar their backs to look like a crocodile scales. It's very painful. It often results in death. We know what the Hebrews do. I'm not going to go into detail. There's the Sater Maui who make bullet ant gloves with leaves. It's a huge pain ritual. In a lot of human cultures, there's some sort of like a mutilation as part of a coming of age.
Yeah, and in the West, we get married.
Yeah. That's how we lose our manhood. That's right. In this case, it's like you'd mentioned. This is like an upgrade. So why are we giving up something of ourselves that's human and upgrading it with something that's not? It speaks to some sort of like a cross-pollination culturally after the Marmelins, you know, kind of let go of their secrets. Because the Marmelin, I think is that the name for the people on the planet? Marmelins. They're largely tech phobic. I mean, yeah, they use the laser cutters, but they have their secrets. They're kind of content to keep it like that. So this shows a dramatic change in 5 generations from the people that we see. Just a
yes, and I think that's an important point to make. The child that you see is the current Metabaron that the robots are working for. This is the exchange of where he receives his first exchange of mantle, and then they tell the story. But that's the nice part about the way the narrative works is they establish that we're generations beyond where the story starts immediately. This is current. Oh, let me tell you this story. Well, it's our current Metabaron. This is how he became the Metabaron. But his great grandfather. This is his story. This is where the Metabarons were born, and that's where we go from here. But it's very powerful. And then this was the other one, and this is the story going into where that came from. This is the great grandfather, how many great? There's 5 grades. 5 grades. Grandfather of this child, who's the current Metabaron in the context of the narrative. So this is his great grandmother, and
that's really grating.
Yeah, they have to reveal their secret in order to save the great grandfather, which causes the universe to all come and fight, and everybody comes and fights them. They all fight amongst themselves, and then they try to take the secret. And the grandmother walks out, is brave, and says, these people that the Metabarons come from are extraordinarily loyal to this galactic empire. And that's all they have is their honor. And so she walks out and beseeches the people that are attacking their facility to get their secret, to be honorable, uphold your vow. And she has just proceeded to be mowed down, which is one of probably the most unintentional, hilarious things ever. Like, she gives this great moving speech and then just gets shot.
Dude, comedy is hard. And in 2 pages, I've laughed harder than I have in like the past 5 years of however many comedies have come out in that time. This was hilarious. But it is also very poignant because this reflects the shift that needs to be made. You have this very rigid culture, this warrior culture, who now has a pirate at the helm. And this matriarch has come out and said, this is the stand we take. We are an honor culture. Honor yourselves. And everybody just like straight through her, like really funny, but poignant as well. And another thing, like kind of tying back into what I was saying about this being a Greek tragedy in many ways, prior to her bursting through the window and asking everybody to, lay down their arms, her son is about to do it because he's a young man. He's a warrior. He wants to prove himself. What does his dad do? He like breaks both of his legs
No,
permanently.
and that's so after his wife dies, his response to his son, who immediately wants to go get a response, is to break both of his legs so he doesn't just go off half-cocked, essentially.
Yep.
And like, no, son, no, I'm going to break both your legs so you're just stuck here, and I'm going to handle this in the way that a pirate would handle it. And I'm going to be treacherous as hell, and we're going to use every asset that we have. And he sends his two most trusted people levitating these massive marble blocks with the special oil that they have. And it's brilliant in a way. And I really like how Jodorowsky does this, is he talks about how the methodology of military at this point, these are the elite guard of the emperor, and they're used to having a technological superiority at range. Well, the Metabarons they're masters of martial combat. So the goal is, all we have to do is get in close. If we get in close, they've forgotten how to fight. But that's what we know how to do. So we're going to use every asset at our disposal. And even though we're massively outnumbered, we're going to use these massive blocks of marble as shields, and we're going to come in from the two flanks. And while you guys are doing that and distracting them, I alone am going to go into their center through the secret tunnel and pop up right underneath them and devastate them.
Yeah, he descends into the underworld because that's his domain. He's
exactly.
a pirate.
Yep.
He's not an honorable warrior. And what I really like here too about this page, there's so much brilliant stuff going on. The fight above and the fight below, literally physically separated by our narrators, who are reminding us that we're listening to a story. You know, hey, this is a narrative. We are narrating to you. And above us physically, in the light, are these blocks ascending. Below us is a thief in the night, knife in the mouth, who's coming around to stab as many fools as he can before they notice anything's happened.
Well, I think the knife in the mouth is the key, because that's like your quintessential thief motif, right? It's Conan. It's Tower of the Elephant. Like, as he's climbing behind the other thief that he meets in the garden up the tower, he's got his knife in his teeth. Like, that's the classic. It's that classic look that Robert E. Howard painted so well with his words that we're seeing yet again. And so because that's so ground into our ethos of what we associate with a thief, we see that again. And he's a pirate, and that point cannot be undercut. This is the ploy. This is the strategic ploy of a pirate. No martial soldier would come up with this. This is him. And it's important because right after he breaks his son's leg, his son dismisses him. Like, you're a coward. You don't want to fight. Your wife just died an honorable death, and you won't avenge her. You're not even going to try. And he goes, no, I'm going to. But, you know, it's you can run down and fuck one cow, or we can walk and fuck 300. It's that.
What?
Is that what I said? Why don't we fuck them all?
Exactly. It's that microcosm of the understatement of what, you know, age and guile beats youth, innocence, and a bad haircut, to quote PJ O'Rourke. But that's what we see here. And then he pops up and the fight happens. And what I love about this is we get, other than he pops up and just says death, you get the image of him just slashing and fighting and just destroying these people. It cuts back to the narrative, you know, and you get that he became a legend that day. That's where the Metabaron was born. He defeated 1,500 of the Emperor's personal guards almost single-handedly.
Right.
And then the best part is after that you get this very mournful moment where he goes and collects the bodies of his friends that he sent to their deaths. The only two people he really trusted, the only two people that he could rely on. And he's got to go out, and he's mournful. His son he broke his own son's legs to do this, and he lost all of his support. And that he goes back, and the first thing he does after he gathers his friends' bodies and buries them is to go back and tend to the wounds of his son that he caused. He broke his own progeny to win. And it's what's the cost to win? And that's the Metabaron theme, is it doesn't matter what the cost is, you will always win. You will always win. That's your responsibility. We are always going to win, no matter the cost.
Yeah. And that's kind of the curse of the Metabaron, because in this man's actions to cripple his son, right? This is the tragedy coming into play. He's doing it so that his son stays safe. But the character flaw is that he doesn't see his son as somebody capable.
Right. And that comes
and as a parent,
much later. And that's the hardest transition. And I think, again,
yes.
this is where Jodorowsky knocks it out of the park. Because this guy's a pirate, and he's got a pirate. If you go back to when he inherited the mantle of the Baron, right?
Mm-hmm.
His father-in-law was a man of honor and duty and understood. And he said, "You're better than me, but you don't know how to lose. You're not willing to take a small sacrifice." But yet here, he doesn't take a small sacrifice. It's almost like he learned the lesson, but he amplified it.
Yes. Or he directed
way.
it in an appropriate place, because his father-in-law took a nick on the shoulder. He got bled. And that's what the Metabarons kind of carry going forward. They bleed themselves to show, like, I'm willing to sacrifice something to get through. But to, like, I guess, yeah, him capping his son at the knees also carries into the Metabarons.
But the difference is
well.
he didn't sacrifice himself. He sacrificed the future.
Yes.
And where that comes into being is this fundamentally changes the story. Is because he maimed his son is now not 100%. So after this event, and they end the conflict and they make an agreement with the Galactic Empire. And that's the most important point, is you would think with the way the story focuses, this guy, the Metabaron, is the most powerful being in the universe, but he's not. He's just a fiefdom within this global universal empire. This is just a small piece of what's going on in this world. He's not even the big kahuna of the Galactic Empire. He's just a fiefdom. So all he asks of this Galactic Emperor, again, it's the House Atreides to Dune. You just stood pat. You beat my Sardaukar, right? Again, in close quarters combat. When this is going on, you don't see the swords and sci-fi thing as much. This is when this is going on, this is happening in the mid to late 80s and 90s. You don't see the swords and sci-fi thing like you do now. And so the whole concept of a martial concept in science fiction when you've got laser guns is relatively not new, but it's underutilized. And so that's a revolutionary concept. And so we've got a martial guy. He exploits his son. He breaks the future in exchange for the win. And then we get, I love this page, man. And again, you talk about, you talk about what Metabarons is. It's this beautiful blend of story and atmosphere. And the atmosphere is like 99% of the art. The story is told through the text, but it's the atmosphere that's buying you why you want to turn the page. And that's what works so exceptionally well. And there's no page better to explain it than this. This is exceptional stuff, man. It's that layered depth. It works so well.
Yeah, I love the contrast between these two different types of ships too, because you have this giant gold vanity project that's clearly like a big old Pope mobile. And then you have these like smaller sharks swimming around it. You have something that's entirely mechanical and something that's almost animalistic. I was stunned. I mean, going through this little collection, it's hard to come across a page I don't know, open up randomly and really find something out of it. But I had to stop here a bit and go, hot damn.
I like how it looks like a saxophone with some clarinets mounted onto it.
Oh, damn.
Well, that's the gilded aspect of it. Is all the ships here have, it's beyond just a form function thing. There's a layer above that. Everything does have an instrumentation look to it because it's an instrument of destruction, right? So you've got this, there's musical overtones, but the designs work. And if again, there's two ways to take this. Like, you can just pick up Metabarons and start reading it. But man, again, if you go and look and just flip through the design concepts from the 1974 Jodorowsky's Dune, or if you watch Jodorowsky's Dune, the documentary, and you see some of the imagery, you'll see what he's playing with here. And he's playing with metaphor in everything throughout the concept of this. This is one of those books that you can just read it and look at it, and it's absolutely fantastic. But when you start looking at where these ideas were born from, it takes on a whole secondary meaning. And it is a magnificent accomplishment as an artist, as a creator. And what Jodorowsky and Giménez did here, it accomplishes this in spades. It has two different realms that it exists in. It exists if you just grab it off the shelf with no foreknowledge and read it. And then there's another one where if you know where everything, what the genesis was for these designs and where all this came from, it brings in something entirely different. And that's where something like source books and sketchbooks from creators bring so much more into a creation, because you can be a massive fan and love it for what it is. And then the minute you see where some of their inspiration came from, it opens up whole new doors of understanding where their mind was while they were doing it. And I think that's absolutely amazing, especially with something like this, where we're telling an epic story that is generational, which in and of itself is amazing. Like, it blows my mind. They're telling a generational story. This is something people don't even buy life insurance now, because they don't think about how are my kids going to benefit after I'm gone? So we live in a world where that's not even a commonality. And he's talking about 7th or 8th generations.
Yeah, again, I don't even return the shopping cart.
Don't remind me. Goodness.
Oh.
Oh.
I don't have any of the high trust, low trust society comments loaded on the gutter stuff, but my God, do I wish I did right now, JP. Because I could go into an epic rant, and instead we're going to talk about a different page. So what you get is, so in exchange for him for the Metabaron defeating the Emperor's Guard that turned on the Emperor and just were citing out this magic oil for their own purpose, because he won, the Metabaron basically asks the Emperor, he's like, hey, I want a piece of everything that's sold, that's done with this commodity, and also I want a horse for my son who can't walk. And so he gets the only genetically birthed horse, because horses have been extinct, which cost an astronomical amount of money. And his son gets this horse, and he relocates to a verdant and lush planet. And of course, pirates show up, because this is the thing I love about this. It doesn't portray, Metabarons does not portray this glorious society where everything has order. There's a layer of order, but immediately beneath that is total chaos.
Yep.
Like, in every turn where we have a positive in this civilization, it's a fragile civilization, because it only exists at that superficial level. And for a bunch of the Crackpack guys in the chat this week, I shared a tweet that talked about, we are always, if you went to public school, you understand that every aspect of society is measured by the lowest quantile. Like, how much freedom you have is measured by the lowest quantile. How much policing goes on in your community is measured by the lowest quantile. What you're allowed to do, where you're allowed to go, how safe you are in any avenue of your life is always measured in the lowest quantile. And this is a great example of that, carried forward in fiction, maybe unintentionally, but he shows you the way Jodorowsky has constructed the story, that even though these people, the Metabarons, are some of the richest people in the universe next to the Empire, because they have this residual income that they get off of this levitating oil that sources back to why they were the only source for marble. But despite all of that, despite being one of the wealthiest families, they are still subject to the act of pirates. And the pirates come in and they steal the horse. Right. They steal the horse. And the son responds. He goes out and he wants to vanquish the enemies. But the father's concerned because, again, the son is not 100% because of the broken legs. And so the father goes out and extinguishes the pirates. But unfortunately, the father does the one thing. And this is where Greek tragedy comes in, Abe.
100%. 100%. Because his fatal flaw is not trusting his son, debilitating him, therefore further decreasing his trust in his son. Whereas his son is capable, as we learn. He is capable of getting the horse back.
And he
But
did
our
because
protagonist learns too late.
the father kills the first 3 pirates, but the son had killed the 4th pirate.
Yep.
And the father thinks that the son in the fog is the 4th pirate and kills his own son.
It's so brutal.
And while he's distracted, mourning over his son is then eviscerated.
Oh yeah. Let me tell you, one of those pirates is part chimp, and I know it's the guy who did that. Because as a chimp, if you go for the face, sure, maim the face, but always go for the junk. Screw those balls up. Just maim it. And this dude is just whack straight in the junk.
Well, so you get, again, we talked earlier about the 9-panel grid structure, right? We're 3x3s. Again, perfect example of its execution. And we get this. He's mourning his son. He's distracted. We get the blast, and he's vaporized. He's messed up, man.
It's brutal, and it's much more on the nose than something like Oedipus taking his eyes out and then being like, oh, I guess that kind of symbolizes his manhood. No, his testicles are fried. His hip is disintegrated. There's nothing.
Right. And so then this goes into, then his son is dead. And this goes back to the Canterbury Tales, right? Because then we jump back to the robots, and the robots are going like, well, from my understanding of how biological reproduction takes place, like without genitals, how is he able to reproduce? Like, oh, let me tell you that story. And that's why the narrative techniques work, because now
Yes.
we're working into, we get the rise of the Metabaron, and the Metabaron in this sense is the title, right? So it's the great grandfather of our current character. But while we're saying that, and while we're getting ready to tell that story, oh, there's an alarm. We've got attackers. And you go to that verdant, lush world. Only now we're 4 generations forward from the story that we've been encapsulated up to this point, and somebody's attacking it. And so they materialize a form of their lord, of their Metabaron, and he can only exist for a short period of time. And he just goes out and hops in a fighter and kills him because he's the absolute apex of, predator now.
Yep.
And you get that glimpse of what everything that just happened, everything we just saw happened 4 generations ago. And then you get a glimpse of where they are now. And they're talking like, and we've got 4 seconds, 3 seconds. Oh, and he'll never do it. Oh my God, he did it. Yeah,
Yep.
Of course he did it, because he is the apex predator. He is the absolute. Now let me go back and tell you about where that was sourced from. That is such a good narrative technique. And Jodorowsky knocks it out of the park. He does so well because he builds up the emotion. And again, you've got this really dry narration from these robots that have no emotion. They're acting, they're excited. And like JP said, that's a great little levity moment. We're like, oh, I can't wait to hear what's next, because they're your reader. They're your POV, right? They're your association. And that leads it into, then now you've got 2 questions. Well, what happens in the past to lead it to this modern where does the Metabaron even exist anymore? Or is he just a virtual code that is embodied within a clone that can only exist for 15 seconds?
Right.
As
Because
he maintained that maximum point.
The robots, they flat out say like, humans are kind of inferior. Getting upgrades for robot parts is better. And then they praise the Metabaron. And you're like, what does this guy even look like at this point?
And so that's where issue 4 kind of closes out, is we're dealing with, we're back to the past, and we've established what he is today. And then we're back to the past, and we've got his great grandfather, who's got no pelvis. He's got no genitals. How does he recoup his lineage. Well, first he becomes the most brutal of brutal, right? He reestablishes what it is to be a Metabaron. He becomes like the apex predator, which establishes what we've already seen. And that's the nice part. Again, we've established what he becomes, and now we're going to show you why he becomes it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we show that, and then we start hinting at, oh, well, the emperor who was sterile, he's now begotten a child via 30 years of work to begot a child for the emperor. And we're going to suggest there's science out there that is capable of now taking something that could not happen and make it happen. You can have progeny. You can have a future. But there are still, again, there's that undercut layer. Society exists at 2 levels. And you know pirates are going to happen. And what happens? Pirates happen. But who saves the day? It's the Metabaron.
Genital pirates.
Genital pirates. And that sets the tone for now what's the ask of the Metabaron to the Emperor this time. And it's, of course, going to be, well, I need a son. Because I killed my own son. But I'm now the apex predator. I'm now the best. And that's where issue 4 leaves off. And that's where the story really starts taking off. This is just the introduction. And man, you guys did a crash bang up job of laying it out. I think your analysis of saying it's Canterbury Tales is perfect. It's the great narrative technique. It's a perfect example of how you tell an epic science fiction story and start it off and hook your reader almost instantaneously with a great concept that has been used in the past very, very successfully, but also a narrative technique in the 3-panel in the 3x3 grid that is executed flawlessly throughout this by Giménez. It doesn't need to be fancy. You don't need to do multiple splash pages. That art just needs to hit home and needs to contain the subtext and really needs to resonate. So, JP, you've been kind of quiet tonight. I mean, what's your take? I know you only read the first actual floppy issue. What was your takeaway from all of this?
Well, I mean, the kind of burning question I had was how, I don't think you've touched on this, but well, I guess actually 2 questions. The first one, how was this received? Because, I get accused of being a little too high art for comics. So I'm just kind of wondering, how did people take to this?
Mixed, actually. When it first dropped in the States, it was mixed. Since it's been collected, it's one of those books that since it's been collected, it's gotten much more popular.
People see it. Yeah, people see
now it's considered
the trees for
legendary.
the forest. Gotcha.
Right.
And then I don't know if I must have missed this part, but so when do they fuck 100 cows?
It was a metaphor. Damn it.
Oh, okay. I missed that issue.
No, it's the I don't know. Maybe is this saying like only in farm country where I'm from that like there's a young bull and an old bull, and the young bull says, "Hey, let's run down there and fuck a cow," and the old bull says, "Let's walk."
Well, Aldous, when you only say the punchline and you trim off the context.
I assume a level of like commonality amongst people that I should just be able to say the punchline and you understand the reference.
Well,
it's not like I'm citing Act 3 of Julius Caesar. Upon what meat doth this my feet Caesar feed that he hath grown so great. I'm quoting a fucking joke, man. I'm not referencing.
Well, we're not all Hicks, Aldous.
Oh, come on, we're all Hicks, aren't we?
And then he said the Aristocats.
Hey. That's
9/11. I barely know her,
but I'm bummed.
Yeah. This is a like a fundamentally European book. I can understand if people were getting floppies here in America, be like, "Wow, okay." It's just something about it. In the same way that like the 3 Body Problem series is a fundamentally a Chinese series of books, and
that's a great point. Floppy wise, I think it is an absolute. Now, I will say this book works really well as a floppy if you're familiar with it because of where it starts and ends. It fails as a floppy if you're walking into this cold. The collected work is a full recommend. It's a fantastic read front to back. But I think for somebody that isn't familiar with all of the back history behind this, especially for American audiences, I think it's one of those where this needs to be in collected format, and it can't be in episodic. It does not work episodically unless you understand the whole backstory. Without the whole backstory, you've got to read it in a collected format.
What would you say, since you said that things can be quintessentially European or quintessentially Chinese, what would you say is a quintessentially American story that doesn't
Cormac
translate?
McCarthy, anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, dude, Blood Meridian.
Blood Meridian, yeah.
I've recommended. So I used to work for a German megacorp, and I'd always been familiar with Cormac McCarthy. I'd read The Road, and then JP got on me like, dude, you need to read Blood Meridian. Back when we were doing the Saturday show, and we were talking about villains. The judge was his villain, and I remember asking you like, what's this about? You gave me a brief rundown. I listened to the audiobook, and it's one of those few books. The only other one was Duma Key by Stephen King, where I ever listened to the audiobook and went, I need to read that. And so I listened to the audiobook while I was driving around for Blood Meridian, and then I went, man, I need to read this. And I read it, and then I started recommending it to people. And it's one of those where if I recommend it to you, I know I'm not going to recommend it to somebody that isn't going to enjoy it, kind of thing.
Like a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going for. Thank you, JP. But yeah, I recommended it to a couple of my European friends, specifically Austrians and Germans, and none of them that have read it understood it in any context. They just missed it. In the same way that like they've recommended like some of Slavoj Zizek's stuff to me, and I'm like, well, I'm not a communist, so I don't understand this. So I think it's something that McCarthy's Blood Meridian is quintessentially American, but I think it goes beyond that. I think it's quintessentially individualist.
Right.
In a deeper sense of a Western than a lot of other things that have ever been written. And
because I mean, the American storytelling and pretty much since the beginning of American literature has been all about exploration and carving out a piece of land that's just for you, whereas to a European that's had the same borders, like nobody's discovering anything in Europe, right? You have your set areas, your set borders, nothing ever changes. So that spirit of exploration doesn't resonate the same way it does to Americans.
Right. And I think this story it's not quintessentially European, but how it handles certain concepts.
Well, lineage, I mean, that's definitely European.
The lineage aspect for sure is very European, because I think we've lost that as Americans. We don't have a great understanding of generationalism, and that's to our detriment. We should have an understanding of generational, where you came from.
Well, we don't want to have a royal family, but
generationalism is important because it's about where you came from. It's not about entitlement. It's about where you came from and who were the people that begot you and what were their morals and what did they accomplish. And you should take pride in that. That's the only loss of American individualism, is that we are very proud of what we accomplish and what we do in our lives, but we don't have enough of a buildup of, I did this, but I came from that. And I was only able to accomplish this because my father did that. And he was only able to accomplish that because his grandfather did that. And there's a detriment to our society.
To answer Henry Bemis's question, Aldous knows a lot of Austrians and Germans, but it's through a contact in Argentina that he has.
I did a lot of work in Argentina, actually. More so Chile. I spent more time in Chile than Argentina. But yeah, Henry Bemis, I worked for a megacorp that is a very largely, for over a decade, that is a German megacorp. So I know a lot of Germans, Austrians, Serbians, Russians, Poles. I spent quite a bit of time in Europe. Lived there for a couple years, off and on. So know a lot of people in the old country, as they say. But yeah, most of them are Austrians and Germans, as funny as that may be. But no, I think go ahead, Abe. Sorry to walk over you.
Oh, it's all good. No, I was going to say there's also something, maybe not explicitly European, but it's probably not American about like having a craft that you've perfected over thousands of years to the point that it almost looks magical. I remember going to Venice and seeing some of the glass blowers who do work there. They will blow like giant elephants, multicolored for you, like just right in front of you, and then they'll toss it right back in the fire because they do that every day. The
That sounds
Metabarons,
very Japanese.
You know what? There's
a lot of there's a lot of similarities in the culture because again, I'm trying to think of what the right word is, but it's imposed within the context of this book where I might accomplish something, but I couldn't have accomplished it without a ton of help and assistance. And it's not me, it's my father, it's my grandfather. So I'm not going to take any relish of celebratory in this because while I did it, I couldn't have accomplished it without this. So it's not an accomplishment. The accomplishments that I do alone are the ones that I am proud of. And I think that's the foundation of what Jodorowsky is trying to instill here is that there's something much deeper beyond just it's not just generational. It's familial. You need to have there's a pride that exists for upholding that. And I think it's lost. It might be lost on a lot of modern readers.
Yeah, I mean, I think every guy remembers when they learn that they can do it alone.
Thank you,
son of a bitch.
But Ape Man, so you only read the first 4 issues. This is your kind of introductory to Metabarons. You've owned it for a while. What was your takeaway?
Frankly, we need more work like this. I mean, the art speaks for itself. This is a book that, I mean, a really dumb person could walk into and appreciate. You know, but as somebody who can actually read, it's that much better. Obviously, you could probably put up like a little ticker symbol for the amount of times I said Greek tragedy, but I mean, it tickled that little. It satisfied me in that way. Don't clip that too, Snuggie Jr. But I mean, it's just a beautiful work. I didn't want to go beyond what we decided to do because I have had this for a while. I've been working through a couple other books, but I'm very excited to proceed. If the rest of the story is anything like this, it's going to be a brilliant time. Oh, it looks great. Just flipping through these pages, it's nuts.
No, it gets better. The art is again, it's almost a textbook example of why sequential art is such a beautiful thing. And on the 100th episode of The Gutter, I did briefly want to talk about this. And thank you guys so much, all of you viewers out there. I understand this show is not for everybody, nor is it intended for everybody. The intention of this show is never something to garner an audience. After doing multiple years with Jeremy as his show exploded, it was very evident what you can do to blow up a show and get a ton of subscribers. I never wanted to do that. I want to do things my own way. I love doing The Gutter. I love doing the Wednesday show. But The Gutter is my passion, and it's just about talking about comics. And I'm going to talk about comics my way that I think is the most fun. And if you don't, that's great. Just don't watch. I love doing this. And I love everybody that supports us. So thank you so much. But beyond that, one of the things I love more than anything is JP's absolutely terrible takes. So much. So I think it was like such an exclamation point for me on the 100th episode that you only read the first issue and don't have a good grasp of the book. Because it just makes the show all that much more better for me.
Right, but like
really,
how many times
it's about
how many times have you referred
this.
to I think the most poignant comment on this episode was my comparison to Canterbury Tales, which you referred to numerous times, and I've only read one issue.
Yeah, no, because it's very evident what
I look forward to,
up. And you're a very erudite individual, and you understand storytelling, so you're going to pick up on that. That's why you're such a damn good author, man.
Covering this entire series on The Gutter, episode number 400.
Yeah. We'll see. But I'll give you guys last thoughts. We're gonna probably close out right now. We've gone a little bit over. Not our longest episode, but
Just a
close
little
to it.
heavy-handed.
Just a little.
Just
God damn
little.
it! You know what, guys? Do you guys have any interest in just me doing T-shirts that have Mike's comment on them? Because
Let's go.
Just the gutter with Mike's comment underneath it. I can do that. The gutter comment. Actually, the gutter. The logo is actually off of a pulp magazine or a pulp book from I think 32. So that'd be a fun one if anybody ever wants to find that. But yeah, I think that's it. Is there anything else we need to do, Abe?
Yeah, I wanted to, kind of. Sorry, that give a mouse a cookie book. You give a monkey a microphone. It's best that you sit down. This show is great for a lot of reasons. I mean, like I said, you could be an idiot, walk into the Metabarons and love the book. But there are some books, like we mentioned in that Crack Pack DM group, like Tumor, which wouldn't sell me on the cover. I would know nothing about the creative team. I would look on the interiors and go, who reads this? And then the synopsis would maybe interest me enough to give it a passing glance. But because of shows like this that actually take the time to look into good pieces of work, I got that book, and now I have something that I can recommend to my friends who read comics and really surprise them with something that's not going to be on a top 10 list of whatever the fuck, Beyond that, Metabarons is great. You should get it. And if you're lucky, maybe somebody can give it to you. It's the 100th episode after all. And I think I got everybody's names here on this window that I'm going to try to share. Let's see if it totally fails. You see that there?
I got it.
I'm trying to...
There we go.
All right. So I'm offering in some form copy of the Metabarons. I believe it's the 5th edition hardcover copy. I want to get it out to you, whoever you are. You see your name on the list. You don't see it right now. Stop me. I'm about to go. What's going to tonight? Let's see here. Well, there you go. Very deserving.
I guarantee you Sandberg already owns this. But
damn it,
congratulations,
Sandberg.
Jason Sandberg. It's incredibly benevolent of you that you're going to give away something. So that's awesome, man. But why don't you spin it again?
Yeah, sure. Let's spin it another time.
Yeah, let's get a backup because if for some reason that Sandberg,
dude, every time I have a book to give away, it's freaking crazy mad. God damn it. Crazy mad? Okay. He's not going to read it either. All right.
No. Well, here's what's going to happen. If Jason Sandberg doesn't own that, then that will go to Sandberg, and I will send something to Crazy Mad. I've got quite a few things that I could send him, including a brick. There's a cinder block, I've got a scrap 2x4, but I've also got a bunch of free books. And I'll package something up and send it to him. So thank you guys so much for visiting us on the 100th episode. And hey, man, that's so amazing. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it's a small way to, say thanks, guys, for watching. Look, have fun reading. Read books. Read books to your kids. Read books in front of your kids so that your kids can see that's something you do on your off time, not just when you're obligated to at night. Have fun reading. Comics are great. Keep being excellent. Thanks for tuning in.
Awesome. Well, again, that was Arrogant Ape, our executive producer. Prior to his career as a producer, he was doing things like this. I still can't believe you shot up the scotch, man. That's almost unforgivable. But JP, last thoughts.
Sure. Metabarons might be good. But speaking of things that are hard hitting, I do regret to inform everybody that arguably the hardest hitter in the history of organized fighting, George Foreman, has passed away.
Yes,
So
it is.
rest
it is
in peace to
incredibly sad.
George.
He is survived by his sons, George, 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 and George.
And a grill that you have in your garage that smells like burnt farts.
Yes. But that's going to do it for us this evening. Thank you for joining the Gutter on its 100th episode. We all appreciate you. Do you appreciate yourselves as much as we appreciate you? That's really the question you need to focus on. But from us to you, have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
This is blood for blood and by the gallons. This is the old days, man, the bad days, the all or nothing days. They're back. There's no choices left.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.